any of you watching this are watching these videos because you are having these symptoms and signs, and maybe you haven't been diagnosed, please just call your on-call doctor. That's one thing I wish I would have done sooner, is I wish I would have called and talked to them more about this. Not that it might not have prevented the outcome, but I wish I would have called earlier. So usually in my videos I'm a pretty positive, upbeat person, but I wanted to do a follow-up to my video titled Life Update, and I feel like I need to do it not only for myself but for others, especially for other first-time moms who have never experienced a pregnancy before, and even those who have experienced a pregnancy before, but especially for those who have not and don't know what to expect. I have no idea how I'll be throughout the video, and if it's too hard then I'll just stop filming, but I feel like I need to do this. Well, I found out it was October, the very beginning of October, maybe October 2nd, that's ringing a bell to me, and we had tried getting pregnant for a month. So we were very quick to get pregnant. I know that that's not the case for some people, but for us it was pretty quick, and I was immediately dubbed the fertile myrtle, and it just happened a lot quicker than what we thought it would. I told Chris, and we told our families. I think it maybe was a week later or a week or two later than that, we told our family. And at this point I was recording everything because I had in my mind planned out a specific playlist for my channel called Waiting for Baby. So I had all of this footage, and I had filmed my, a little vlog before my 8-week checkup. And then after that, I just stopped filming, and I don't know why. I'm a pretty open person, but for some reason I had just decided I wasn't going to film anymore. Or at least I wasn't going to post it on YouTube like I thought. And that was very strange to me because I thought that's what I had wanted to do, and then I became pregnant and decided not to. Up until the 3rd trimester, my pregnancy was fairly normal. I had one little weird thing happen in my 1st trimester. It was almost like I got thrush on my tongue. It was very weird. Up until, that was the only thing that had been wrong in the pregnancy. I didn't have any complications. I am overweight for my height, so that alone I was concerned about, but I was gaining weight fairly steadily, and I didn't really ever have morning sickness or anything like that. I was constantly saying how lucky I was to have a good pregnancy. The first part where I recognized something, I didn't even think it was wrong at the time, but now looking back at it, it was definitely a red flag, and I just didn't really realize it. Around 26 weeks, I started developing swelling in my feet. I think it was my feet first. Might have been my hands first. But either way, I was getting swelling. And I remember coming home from work, and my husband and our dog were across the street from where we live. There's a big open field there, so they were kind of running around. And I walked up, and Chris was like, look at your feet. Your feet are huge. I had flats on, and, the swelling had, bubbled over the shoe. And I was like, it's 3rd trimester. This is supposed to happen. I didn't really think anything else of it. And then I started getting swelling in my hands, and my wedding ring wouldn't fit anymore. But again, I was attributing that to it's the 3rd trimester. So this stuff is supposed to happen. And then I had a doctor's appointment. It was my first 3rd trimester appointment. And I went in, and they had tested my urine for the first time since I had went in for the very first prenatal appointment. And she said that my urine was showing protein. So I said, okay. And she said, I want you to take the next, it would have been 2 or 3 days, no work. And I want you to collect a 24-hour urine collection, essentially. So I had to pee into this jug. Well, not into the jug. I had a hat that I don't know. I guess it's called a hat. I don't know. You don't wear it on your head. Let's put it that way. You put it on the toilet, you pee into it, and then you put that into the orange jug. Those of you who have been through it before, you know what I'm talking about. So I had to pee into that, and I had to deliver it back to the hospital. Well, that's where I chose to deliver it to. I dropped it off and had my blood drawn. And then the next day, this would have been day 3, I went in to get checked again, and the collection had came back, and she basically came in the room and said, you have pre-eclampsia, you are no longer allowed to work. And this would have been at 30 weeks. So at 30 weeks, because my appointments were off by 2 weeks, I should have technically had been seen at 28 weeks, but then the doctor that I was supposed to see along the line had gotten called out somewhere, and I was at 30 weeks. So I'm going to grab my notes just because my memory gets a little foggy. So I went in for the prenatal visit on April 6th. That was where they found protein in the urine. My blood pressure was elevated and I had been swelling. I'm glad I took notes. I had also gained 7 to 8 pounds from the last visit, which would have been 4 weeks prior to that. So that's another sign. So I had gone back on April 8th. This is when she told me I had preeclampsia, and I was off of work pretty much on mild bed rest. My blood pressure was high, but not high enough to be prescribed medication. And she basically said, go home. I want you off work. You can do light, not even light housework, but basically if you want to do the dishes, go ahead, but then go sit down. Like, don't clean your whole house in one day. You can make yourself something to eat, go to the bathroom, but other than that, you need to be resting. And at that point, they had ordered me to come back on April 14th for a non-stress test, just to see how things were going. I had had one non-stress test so far, and everything at that point had looked okay. On April 10th, I had been up most of the night with a headache, and I was told if you have a headache that does not respond to medication, to call the on-call doctor. So I took Tylenol, and basically it didn't go away. So early that morning, I called the on-call doctor, and he had said to come on in. So I went into the emergency room. I didn't know I could just go straight up to labor and delivery, so I went to the emergency room. They then sent me to labor and delivery. And they put me on they put me in a room, essentially, hooked me up to the monitor. There was a heartbeat. He was so active that they had a hard time keeping him on the monitor. So as soon as she would get the monitor where it was supposed to be, she would no sooner walk out and then come back. And they had also ordered a ultrasound. So we went down, had an ultrasound. At that point, I believe he was measuring around the 50th percentile for his size, which was good because with preeclampsia, sometimes there can be growth restriction and babies tend to be a lot smaller. So he was in the 50th percentile, so that was great. They also gave me a steroid shot to help with the baby's lung development, so that way if he did come early, he would have a better chance with his breathing because of the shot would help with his lungs. So I had one dose that day, and then I went in the next day and got the second dose. Everything had looked pretty good. My blood pressure wasn't too high, so they decided, everything looks okay, so go ahead and go home, keep monitoring, and if anything changes, give us a call. The next day I felt really good. I had to go to the hospital, which is about 30 or 40 minutes, depending on how fast you go, from our house, and I got the second steroid shot. I wasn't hooked up that day. It was just go in, get the shot, go home. So that's what I did. And then on April 12th, I started to feel kind of it's hard to explain. I just didn't feel good. I didn't feel great, and I kind of attributed that to I have preeclampsia and I'm in my third trimester, and everybody complains about being in their third trimester, so I just didn't feel good. I just can't explain it. I didn't really feel well. And then that night, going into the 13th, I was up most of the night. I felt off. Like something didn't feel good. I slept a little bit here and there, but just didn't really feel well. Side note, at this point, I think I had been told that I think it's called an anterior placenta, which means the placenta was in the front. So I never really felt him that much. I felt him really down low and always up here, but other than that, I never really felt him consistently throughout the day. From what I remember, like the morning or at night and sometimes during the day, but it was never very consistent. Like they had told me babies sleep for maybe 45 minutes to an hour at a time. When he was active, he was really active. And then not so much. I just never really felt consistent movement. But now that I think back to April 13th, I don't remember feeling him a lot. And I think I was just in denial. I didn't want to think that something was wrong. But I remember not feeling him move a lot, so I remember drinking a lot of orange juice, and I had a little bit of Coke just because I thought maybe the caffeine would get me going. And then I remember starting to feel, it's kind of hard to explain. It was like, not pressure, but just up here would get really tight, and that's where I had always felt him because he was head down, so I just thought that was either his butt or his feet. And so I started to feel stuff up here, so I thought, maybe he wasn't, and this could have been it, I don't really know. Maybe he wasn't so much being super active, but maybe he was just rotating a little bit or repositioning or something like that. So instead of a lot of little consistent movement, that's what I started to feel instead. And then that night, I had started to feel pain right in the middle of my chest. And the midwife that I saw the most, she had told me that if you feel it here to here, more so over here, then that's a problem and you need to call us immediately. So I felt it in the middle. I called the on-call doctor at the time on April 13th in the morning and said that it was in the middle and I just didn't feel very well. And I told him that I had preeclampsia, and he had said that it kind of sounded like, also at that time it had been on and off. It wasn't consistent. So when I talked to him about it, he basically chalked it up to indigestion, and he thought, it sounds like indigestion, and I was on a heartburn medication. So he said, take that. If it doesn't go away, call me back. So I took it and I ate breakfast, and it went away and I felt fine. And I had been really sensitive to foods at this point too. So in the afternoon, I ate lunch, and it was probably more sodium than what I should have had. And I started to feel that pain again, but I kind of just thought it was something that I ate, and I was like, whatever, like, I'll just kind of see what happens. And it lasted all of that afternoon, and then kind of just forgot about it, like it wasn't that bad. I didn't eat much for dinner, and then I had tried to go to sleep. And then that night, so it would have been the 13th going into the 14th, I was up pretty much all night. I didn't sleep, and if I did sleep, it was for 10 or 15 minute increments, or so it felt. I started to get flashing in my vision, which I knew was a bad sign. Okay, shower curtain fell. Alright, so I had flashing in my vision, and I knew that that wasn't a good sign. And then the pain, I have written down the pain right above my breastbone. So that came back. So it must have not been that bad, and then it got really bad. And then I developed a headache, and then I threw up twice. So at that point, I had known, again, I didn't want to think anything was wrong, but I decided to wake up Chris and call the on-call doctor, and they told me, this is the same person who was on call the day before, they hadn't changed the rotation yet, and they told me to come into labor and delivery. Okay, I'm just going to read from the notes because from this point on, I don't remember much. It's very on and off just due to exhaustion and, having it been a traumatic event and all of that. So we went into a room. They put us in a room. I went into the bathroom, peed in the cup, did all the things that I had done that Sunday before. I got into the bed, and they tried to hook me up to the fetal monitoring system again. And she was having a hard time finding the heartbeat, which at first didn't really bother me because when we had gone in for the non-stress test at the doctor's office, she had a really hard time. She found the heartbeat and then had a really hard time getting it to stay there. And then we had gone in Sunday. I think she found it pretty quick, but she had a hard time getting it to stay there. So I wasn't too worried at first, and then she kept trying and kept trying and kept trying and kept trying. And we heard like a really faint heartbeat, and it was like the rhythm was good, but it was super faint. So she changed out the pads thinking that maybe they were bad, and she hooked up the new ones and tried again, and we still couldn't get it. So she brought in the like a portable ultrasound machine just to look. She said that she was looking for positioning because she just couldn't figure out why she couldn't get the heartbeat. So then the doctor who was on call came in. He walked in and she goes, "Yay, my hero," because she couldn't figure it out. And he took over the ultrasound machine. And he took a while and wasn't really saying anything. I don't remember how long. It seemed like a while, but it might not have been. he looked over and said a whole bunch of stuff that I don't remember. I can't really remember what he said, to be honest with you, but I remember looking at Chris and my mother-in-law, who's a nurse. The look on her face told it all, basically. He stepped out and she stepped out, and Chris and I looked at each other, and, you know, he was like, it's okay. And I still just, like, was in complete denial. I had no idea what was going on, or I didn't want to believe what was going on was actually going on. Oh, I didn't want to cry through this. Oh, gosh. Okay. I want to get this done. So she came back in, and my mother-in-law came back in. The doctor also came back in, and he said, I'm pretty sure I'm not wrong, but I could be. But I'm not seeing a heartbeat. He told me that he was going to have the ultrasound tech who was on for the day come in and just kind of confirm things. So she came up, and I would have not wanted to have been in her shoes, that's for sure. You know, when you think about people who have jobs like maternity nurses and ultrasound techs, you think about the good stuff. You don't think about the bad news that they sometimes have to see. So she did what she had to do. She didn't say anything. And I don't remember if it was the same doctor or if it was the new doctor who came on. But they basically confirmed everything and said that there was no longer a heartbeat. Which was hard to hear, obviously, but also because I had just been there like 4 or 5 days prior to that. And everything was fine. And then we were moved to another room because I forgot to say this, but the heartbeat that they were hearing was actually the heartbeat from next door. So the nurse who was trying to find the heartbeat, again, the heartbeat that we were both hearing was from next door, and it wasn't from our baby. So they moved us down to another room because the girl next door was getting vocal, as they said. And I'm glad that they moved me because I would have not wanted to have heard that. And then I even have at my notes at this point, everything kind of becomes a blur. I'm just going to read what I have here because I can't even tell you what I remember. I just remember feeling very numb. Like, I didn't cry. Hardly at all. Barely. I was just, you know, pretty much in shock. I think my brain started to go into defense mode. So it had jumped originally to way in the future. Like, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about that? And I remember thinking, focus on everything one step at a time. So I had never been through labor before. So I was really scared about that. So I was like, okay, what's the next step? What's the next thing that needs to happen? And then once that happened, okay, what do we do now? That's how I had to handle it. I couldn't think about everything at once or else I would have gone crazy. So I had to think and take everything one step at a time. And at this point, they were guessing that it could have been a placental abruption. And that's probably why the baby had passed. You also notice me say the baby a lot because it's hard for me to refer him by his name. And then I think I dozed for a little while. I can't really remember now. And I remember our nurse coming in, who was a sweetheart. She was the first nurse we had for the day. And she said, hey, you have a box here. And I said, a box? And she said, yeah, it's probably a bereavement box. And this is not like the ones that we give. And then, you know, she said, do you mind if I check out to see who it's from? And at that point I was like, absolutely, go ahead. I wasn't getting up. So she opened it up, and it was actually from an organization that's local to us, from a family who had also lost their daughter, I believe at 37 or 38 weeks. To this day, I don't know how it got there so quickly because I had not told, like, I hadn't put anything on social media yet. An obituary hadn't been filed. So to this day, I'm not quite sure how it got there so fast. I've asked around, but no one really seems to know. And then basically they induced the labor and all the things. I'm not going to go into too much detail about my hospital visit because it's not really pertinent, and I don't really remember a lot of it, to be honest. Basically, the next thing I remember, I don't really remember what they were trying to do. I think they were just trying to speed up the dilation of my cervix because it wasn't dilating as quickly as they'd hoped. And I remember my nurse or the doctor was trying to either put in the catheter or to put in a bulb. I think it was the bulb to help make my cervix dilate. And it hurt. I remember it was very uncomfortable. And then the next thing I know, I remember looking at my nurse and she started to like in my vision, she was like jumping here, 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 here. And then the next thing I remember was waking up to an oxygen mask. And they had asked me, did I know what had happened? And I did know, and I don't know how I knew. Maybe I could hear them talking before I woke up. I can't remember. But I had said, yeah, I think I had a seizure. And I had a seizure. So I had gone from pre-eclampsia to eclampsia, I think. I don't really know much about this, to be honest with you. Just from what I've read and from what I can understand. And at that point, I remember it was really hard to breathe. Like, I remember I had to, like, remember to breathe. I think it was from a muscle relaxer that they had given me. I don't really know. And I don't know what time that was at. I have no idea. And then at 1:08 a.m. he was born. And they took him over. They asked me so many times, like, what are you going to want to do when this happens? What are you going to want to do when that happens? And my answer was, I don't know. I didn't know. They took him and they cleaned him off. And I remember holding him. And I remember them giving him to Chris, and then I don't really remember anything else after that. I remember my family came in, and Chris's family came in, and they all held him, but I wasn't really paying attention. I think I was just so in and out of it, I don't really remember. And then I slept the whole night, so I don't know if they gave me something or what, but I remember sleeping. Then I woke up the next morning, and they asked us if we wanted to have him baptized, which we did, and we had planned on doing. But at that point, we weren't really sure what religion or where we wanted to go or anything like that. And they told us the name of the person who normally does it. And ironically, it's the same person who married us. The photos had been taken too. I forgot to mention, photos were taken right after he was born. But I remember they took him out of the room for that. Like, again, I was so out of it. I don't even remember telling them. Like, I know I wanted photos done, but I don't remember them coming in or anything like that. It's interesting to me to see how people handle the situation, because I've watched videos on YouTube and I've seen things like that, and some people, they just want to hold their baby all the time, and for me, it was a little hard to do that. So basically that's pretty much the majority of what I remember from the hospital. I had to go in once a week while I was on maternity leave for a blood pressure screening, and it consistently went down. They did have me on, I think it's called labetalol, I think is what it's called, when I left the hospital up until, I don't remember for how long I was on it, maybe a month. And they decided to take me off of it. And I think before everything happened, my blood pressure was around, like, in the 100 and teens over the 70s. And now I bought an electronic blood pressure cuff to monitor it at home. And it runs a little over 120, and then the bottom number is anywhere from the 60s to the 70s. So I guess that's pretty good. I don't know. So I think the main reason why I wanted to film this was because I wanted people who are experiencing the same thing as what I did to know that when you have symptoms like I did, headaches, flashing in vision, nausea, just not feeling well, the swelling, it's all really important to pay attention to. And the hard thing about preeclampsia is a lot of those symptoms that I had and signs mimic third trimester signs and symptoms, and that's usually when preeclampsia is then detected, is around the third trimester. It can be before that in the second trimester, but typically it's the third trimester. So at this point, it's been 12 or 13 weeks since it happened. Where do we go from here? So we have a doctor's appointment scheduled next week at a perinatal center. So we're going there just to see if they say anything different, which I'm pretty sure they're going to say probably the exact same thing that my office has said. But I also want to talk to them about low-dose aspirin. That's been something that I've been reading about. And nothing can prevent preeclampsia from happening. It was nobody's fault. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't the doctor's fault. It wasn't anybody's fault. It was just, I keep saying, it was like the perfect storm of things that had happened. And unfortunately, this was the result. We are going to see how next week's doctor's appointment goes. And then from there, we will most likely either do whatever he recommends us to do. But we will probably start to TTC after that. Which, if you're not familiar, TTC means trying to conceive. And part of me feels really good about that. And the other part of me is kind of sad, because of everything that happened, but it's also been 3 months, and I'm a little scared too because, you know, you never know if it could happen again. And it might not, but it could. It could be just as severe as it was last time. It might be really mild. I'm not really sure. So it's really scary, but I know what to look for. I feel more prepared to know what to look for if it does happen again. And my doctors that I see on a regular basis are very prepared to see me way more regularly. I will immediately be a high-risk pregnancy from the get-go. And hopefully next time things will have a much better result. Thank you for watching. Sorry this was super emotional, but I guess that's kind of what to expect when you watch a video like this. If any of you who are watching have experienced pre-eclampsia, eclampsia, or HELLP syndrome, please leave a comment below. I would love to chit-chat with you. Or if you film videos, let me know so I can follow you. If any of you are just literally TTCing, I would love to follow your journey. I'm just trying to get back into the swing of things and get myself back to a new sort of normal. I'll check back in after my appointment next week and let you guys know what he said. And hopefully that'll go really well. I'm hoping it won't result in him saying, oh, for your case, we recommend you waiting a year to try again, because that would be really frustrating to hear. But we will see. I hope that if any of you are diagnosed with this, that it goes great for you, and most of the time it does. Mine was just a really rare case. Hopefully from here on out things will be a lot better. Thanks for watching.